you guys introduce yourself. Why don't we start with Kasha here first?
Hi, I'm Kasha Casey. I'm the Chief Media Officer of a company called Known. We are a purpose-built agency to solve the problems that marketers have had with agencies for a long time now.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Andrew Eklund. I'm the founder of Cicerone. We are one of the last OG digital agencies that has not been acquired or gone out of business for the past 28 years, and I'm still here.
Hello, everyone. I am the head of growth and marketing for the dermatology offerings of Ro, which, if you've not heard of Ro, is also the parent brand of Roman.
Roland Asayapong, HP. I run e-commerce.
Very succinct. Okay. Always love that. All right. Well, let's just start the conversation in terms of that omni-channel orchestration. What are you guys doing? How are you looking at it in terms of channels you're testing? And you know, we have Kasha here. Let's just start right with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we had this conversation in the prep, I think you asked a little bit about sort of what channels were we testing and what was performing well. And I push back on the question because what we're seeing with a lot of clients are a lot of questions that kind of split up marketing into buckets and channels. And you know, I have, you know, for example, a lot of clients going, should we do brand or should we do performance? And every time we do the analytics on it, it's not one or the other. And I don't think it's one channel or another. I think every time we've done the analytics, there's an optimal mix of messages and channels and customers that result in, you know, higher revenue or whatever your results are. But for me, it's really about finding that optimal mix for whatever your brand is and whatever you're trying to do, not sort of focusing on one thing or the other.
Well, I know. And then Andrew, you, of course, he always steals my thunder, then jumped in and was just like, okay, who's doing that multi-touch marketing? And so I will be you. I am asking that question. And let's go. I'm going to skip you, Andrew, for now and go right to Kristen.
Yeah, so first of all, echoing everything you said, I think that especially in the D2C venture-backed space, we've gone from a time of growth hacking to marketing 101, right? It's who's your customer, what is your message, and where are you saying it on what channel, and is it consistent? But of course, we have incrementality, we have attribution, we have all those things. For us as a brand, we do that all in-house. We have our own model that we build that is a combination of first touch, last touch, and customer survey data. So how did you hear about us? And then we do a weighted model based on the channel and what we expect that channel to return. But ultimately, it really is a question of, do your channels make sense based on who you're trying to talk to, especially if you have a diverse product set like Ro that has men's health and also has dermatology? And then how are you making sure that feedback loop not only is just the data points from those attribution, but it goes back to the creative team and to the marketing crew so that you know how to adjust your messages by each of these channels.
And Roland, I know that you similarly have that homegrown system as well, but talk about how it works for you and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to Kristen's point and Kasha's point at the beginning, when you do e-commerce, you tend to get trapped in the very low side of the things, and you keep your vision right there, right? And then we get trapped in what single channel is driving the most value for me. But when you come back to the MTA, we want to identify what it is that led to that point, right? Because it is a customer journey, and that's the value of the omni-channel marketing is that journey from the top to the bottom. Each one did play a role, and how do we weight it? How do we attribute it? And what kind of value are we getting in each step of the journey?
But how much, I know part of it was really what happens at what channel, how much does that impact where it's then heading to, and how are you then sort of figuring that out to make your system be more efficient?
Correct, right? Because there's multiple entry points, right? So not everyone is on the same journey, right? So at times also you get caught up in the trap of trying to identify what's extend single journey as they're coming in through CTV, and then let's retarget them with this, then move them to the next step and all this kind of things. They're different entry points, right? So being able to identify what it is that the customer wants, right? So we try to look at what the audience is looking for and then customize our messaging, our brand consistency, whatever it might be, to that audience, right? So it's more audience-centric than us trying to force them into what we determine to be our funnel, right? One person's influencer channel might be another person's conversion channel, right? So being able to identify the flexibility, and that's the whole point of the Omni thing, everything, right? Bringing it all together into that same bucket, and then figuring out what works at a customer perspective and making that drive value for you.
And Andrew, for you too, as well as I know that obviously seeing how the brand is, how the consumers are responding, and how is that determining you with you obviously have different brands that you're working with, so each one is different, but what's the main focus for you guys?
I believe that the consumer is always tremendously in front of where the brand is at all times, meaning that consumer adoption of new technology, new platforms, new social media, all of that happens exponentially fast. And as a result, our ability to respond is almost exponentially slow because we attach a lot of labor to it. And we're generally speaking, we are under budget and under budgeted, as well as, we're never under budget. No, that's not true. We're under budgeted and understaffed to keep up with the consumer, which is why, and I don't mean to pivot, but which is why I'm so excited about what's happening in AI, because frankly, we just do not have the person hours to be able to crunch everything that needs to happen, because each of us may have a different consumer segment, and each segment has its own omni-channel, and each omni-channel has its own media mix and creative necessities. You add all that up, and then nobody has a data scientist on staff, we're kind of screwed. So I'm terribly excited about what's happening in AI in particular, because we as marketers need as much horsepower as possible just to keep up with where the consumer's at.
Right, well, and, Kasha, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the point you made is so true, and there was a meme or an article, I can't remember which, but it was an illustration of how long it took to get to 1 billion users using a TV. It was years, it may have been decades, I'm not good with numbers. ChatGPT, it happened in like a week. So that, you're right, and the expectation then becomes so different. You know, the expectation of, I can type a question into ChatGPT and it gives me, you know, a whole list of things that are super relevant, written in natural language. You know, that becomes what they're expecting from the world. And to your point, there's a lot of innovation that's going to have to happen in marketing for us to get to the point where we're in the same sphere as they are.
Well, and I know, Kristen, you talked about you guys started a CMS system that is helping you to align yourself more quickly. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the big changes that we made from a tech stack standpoint was, as a company, we onboarded Contentful, which is basically, it allows us to quickly iterate our site. It is also our site is not traditional e-commerce. We are a telemedicine company, so there is more of a process that goes in to the customer journey from first touch to first shipment. But what Contentful has allowed us to do is it takes what was some person's role in changing the site and democratizes it across the entire company. So I could, from my laptop or even my phone right now, change a headline on one of our landing pages and have it publish immediately, which is both powerful and terrifying. But what it has allowed us to do is it has allowed us to test more iteratively, to allow my channel managers to really just like create landing pages that are more personalized and specific without the weight of development, which really, this is what it comes back to, right? Is like ChatGPT also unlocks the ability for speed, and that's what we're trying to get to, is we need to unlock the ability for speed without having to weigh so much of the investment and the sweat equity that goes into those decisions.
Well, Roland, I know for you, you were even saying that it's especially, you need those quick answers, those fast results.
Yes.
And you may have noticed a lot of my opening was taking many lines from these guys. So, but that was something that was really important to you. And how are you able to now, they're looking for you, they're expecting you to be able to give those quick answers. Yeah. I'm assuming it's not completely solved, but what are you doing to make that happen?
Yeah, no, speed scares me a lot because I make a lot of mistakes when I go fast. So it's a high demand, high moving, fast moving instant results, high expectation kind of environment, right? So it's going to be very important for us to pay very close attention and almost, and that's where, again, to Andrew's point, the AI and machine learning kind of helps us almost be very predictive in what the next move is going to be, what the customer is expecting, what the audience is looking for, and being able to be there to meet that need when it comes up, right? So being able to identify. Now, trouble is when you have it, and Andrew hit that point again, when you have the multiple verticals within an organization like ours, the multiple products, each audience segment is different, where do you, best way, cut corners, where do you compromise? Right? Is it on creative? Is it on audience? Is it on messaging? How are you able to reach those and still reach the results that you're going to reach at a very high level, right? So for us, it's being able to be very close to the data, finding the right solutions that enable us to have a good read on it, and then getting enough data to be able to fill in that gap to make some sort of predictive analysis and then strive towards achieving that, right? So it comes back to a lot of testing whether or not we have the budget, trying to influence, put that into our activations, and then see what we can learn from there, iterate, and then be ready to react when the opportunity presents itself.
Right. Well, and you talked about messaging, and Kristen, I want to start with you for this because I know in terms of messaging is evolving. Obviously, it's changing. Customers' needs are changing. They're looking for different things. But for you, it's really based on trust. So it's not you have different products, but it all comes back to that trust. So talk about that a little bit.
Certainly. So on the telemedicine side, and I come from more of a D2C e-commerce background, this is my first foray into healthcare. It is, the funnel is quite different, right? You can't just convince someone with a pretty ad that you really need this medication or that you should really try out talking to this doctor. Instead, for us, we had to go upper funnel earlier than you normally would for such a young company. And we also had to align our channel decisions with trust building channels. So for us with Roman, when Roman first launched, it was a lot of television. It was a lot of podcast partnerships with hosts who had voices and audiences that trusted their opinion so that our audience understood this is actually a place I can go and it seems legitimate and confirmed by the people and things that I have known to trust. So that way, when I am ready, if my journey takes me there and I start seeking out a solution, I already know the name and I already know the short list of places I'm going to go check out, and we are top of that list. So in this industry specifically, making sure that we build that authenticity, that trust, and that alignment with those channels is so, so crucial for net new audiences.
And Kasha, I know because you have obviously different clients, so they all have different needs, but how are you finding that's becoming more, I guess, relevant to consumers today? What type of message?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm excuse me, I feel like every client is unique, and I think what we try to do is have a system that identifies where the uniqueness is, and there's lots of ways to do that. There's multi-touch attribution, there's analytic modeling. We're doing a lot of like sort of old school matched market tests so we can very quickly see how channels are performing and messages are performing at a low budget. But for me, it always starts there. It starts with what can we learn, how can we learn it quickly, and then how do we just keep evolving over time? And what are the tools we have to do that? Because I think, sort of the days of working for months and months on a message and a set of creative and then putting it in market and it staying there for a year is just, it's not where the world is and it's not where consumers are. And I don't think we're smart enough to figure that out on our own personally. I think it's, we're all, quite frankly, too biased. And, I told this story over the phone. I worked on a hair growth company for a long time, and we got the brief from the client, and the client said it's for balding men, they're middle-aged, they love sports. It was like sort of this very typical.
Andrew, stand up, please.
And of course, like that's probably where your head goes for a hair loss solution. When we put it in market, what we found was the people buying were younger, they were in their 20s, and they were actually afraid of losing their hair, not having lost it already. And when we made the pivot to address that audience, it was game-changing in how we talked to them, what channels we used, what properties we used. and that's what happens. You know, you can do a lot of research, you can have really smart people thinking they designed something for one reason, and when you put it in market, it ends up that it attracts a completely different group of people with a completely different need. And, you know, that's the kind of, I think, flexibility and nimbleness that you need, you know, today if you're marketing in this kind of world.
Well, and Andrew, I want to jump to you because I know that obviously was a key factor what you were talking about in terms of the bias of consumers, and that maybe as marketers, not everyone's hitting that. But you, again, also, like Kasha, have different clients. So how are you then dealing with the messaging for the different clients? Is there something that seems to be consistent throughout?
Inconsistency. And I think that the problem is that having the tools to allow you to find the language of your segments, of your cohorts, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I believe that this conference a year from now is going to be totally, completely different. A lot of the problems that we're trying to solve will be solved. And I know that sounds so kind of radical and immediate, but I think everything's happening radically and immediately. And so I think that right now we're trying to use language models to find the language of different cohorts. I've been using ChatGPT a lot for that. Personally, well, and the team, just to be able to import cohorts and to be able to ask ChatGPT, write me 10 headlines that will resonate with this group of people. And are they perfect? No, but are they immediate and we can work with them? For sure. And frankly, would we have done the work, or did we have the client budget to do the work that was necessary to get all of those iterations? And the answer is no. And so this provides us a solution faster that is 90% accurate. And I'll take 90% accurate all day.
Well, I'm curious because I had this conversation with one of our other marketers who's not here for this one, but he comes to many. And again, he talked about how this is very efficient, and yes, it's freeing up your time to do the more important things. Yep. But it's almost like the monkeys pushing the buttons, and then, but where does the human interaction have to come in? Where does the human creativity and the mindset have to come in? So where's that line for you, do you think?
I think the line is moving. I think that all sorts of jobs are being redefined right now. If you're a copywriter, your job is being redefined. By the way, apparently people in the Valley are getting paid $300,000 a year to be prompt engineers. I'm sorry, I was around when Google started. Nobody ever got paid to become a search engineer. Like, go to the Google thing and then you type it in and find out what is going to give you the best result. No, it's open to everybody. And so I think that there are a lot of jobs that are going to be redefined in all of this. And let's not wait to find out what the job is going to be. Let's go use the tools and then determine how that makes you better. And also, I just wanted to remind us that most of the automation that's going to happen out of this is going to be automating tasks that nobody wanted to do in the first place. So this is not revolutionary in the sense of like, oh my God, I'm out of business. It's more like the tools are finally here doing the job. Look, there's so much labor involved with doing everything that we talk about to do it right, to really truly do it right. Nobody in this room is doing it right, 100% right? We're someplace in between, 0 and 100. And so all these tools are going to do is give good people with good conscience and good brains more time to do that. And I think it's a creative, we're at the very beginning of a complete and total creative renaissance. And it's going to be absolutely exciting. And the playing field is going to be almost entirely leveled. And so it is a great time to be in this business, but it is not time to be fearful, or you will find yourself just sad. You find yourself sad that you didn't pay attention.
You know, I feel like an interesting analogy for this time in marketing is sort of the advent of YouTube. And I think there was a lot of concern that with the advent of user-generated content, high-quality content would somehow disappear. And I think what we saw is completely the opposite, that content, video content, got better and better and better for many reasons, but the user-generated content wasn't necessarily the killer of high-quality content. And I think the same is true of marketing. Like, I think, to your point, we're gonna have AI changing red cars to blue and changing headlines from buy now to get your free $5 coupon. There's still the need to really understand your brand, to know what your brand is about, how you're going to communicate that to people, how do you make it relevant to them. And I think that is the high value work, not, how are you going to version a headline or how are you going to version a picture. That isn't where the value is. It may have interesting results on the back end, and getting that right can be a difference maker, but what we need people to do is think strategically and in a big way, in a way that I'm not sure AI is at that point yet.
Well, Kristen, do you want to say?
I was gonna say, I completely agree with you. I think that this is both of you, I think this is so exciting because the baseline has changed, right? For the longest time, and I say this really from the lens of that direct-to-consumer group that came up with VC backing, it felt like a template, right? Like, you had the same 5 creative agencies all in sans serif font going to the same channels. Like, it was a very copy and paste sort of model. And there were a few people in this space who really had that answer and that repetition and pattern down. And now it has opened up over time, but AI will get everyone to that baseline. And then it really is, how good are you in this space? How creative are you? How much do you know your customer? How much are you spending that strategic time thinking through not only what is your creative content and campaigns, but does it sync to my brand? And is that consistent so I can build a long-lasting relationship so I'm not spending so much time having to cheaply acquire all the time? It is going to change the landscape. It is very exciting, and it really, I think, if you are a marketer, you're going to surround yourselves with some of the most inspiring pieces, because we don't have to spend all of our time just iterating on the same things that we know work and need to happen, but aren't really where we want to spend our time. So I'm just really piling on to this is exciting, and it's scary because change is scary, but it's ultimately going to be great.
Roland, because I've been wanting to jump to you, because you actually, when we were talking and getting back to the messaging component of it, and Andrew didn't agree that you had to worry about what channel you were on, and he can explain that later.
He'll defend
but
that. Yeah.
Roland had his own thoughts. So because then my question was, how are you efficient? Especially we were talking about this, and budgets are lower, and if you're dealing with so many different channels, so many different personalities of those channels, but to be able to send that same message or tweak it and make it work. So talk about how you deal with that.
Yeah, so it almost touches on what Kristen just said, right? Ideally, if you think about it, and I'm a very visual thinker, right? It will become a very big matrix, because one key thing is where you're finding these audiences, like I'm talking about, you have to be audience-centric. The message is trying to be consistent and in alignment with your brand, but the message I deliver on, say, TikTok is not going to be the same message I deliver on whatever, Pinterest, right? So, and that's why I agree with Andrew to an extent. But the thing is, at the end of the day, we don't have the resources to be able to test across all these spectrums and then keep iterating and then eventually nail what works, right? So we have to understand, and what I advise my team is a continuous learning process, right? So for us, it's supposed to be, we understand what are the key points that we want to take to market and test. What are we going to learn from it? How do we iterate and continue to grow that, right? Now, again, to Andrew's point, testing budgets might not always be available, but I think in and of itself of the execution, the opportunities to keep learning, right? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that small incremental value. If I tweak this little thing, if I tweak that, if I tweak my creative, while keeping your points very consistent, and one little variable, what variables are influencing the right results I'm looking for? That's how we look to plan it, and that's how we look to execute it and get it from there and then move forward. Try to gain efficiencies from there. But it's identifying the variable. Is it a creative variable? Is it messaging? Is it product even, right? Again, to Kaja's point, you might go into it with this idea, but then the market reacts differently. Are we open to making that adjustment, right? Seeking efficiency, sometimes you do lose efficiency on that, but I think it's for the greater good. It's kind of what we're trying to achieve, right? So we should be ready to sacrifice a little bit for the greater gains.
Got it. Well, I'm going to open it up to you guys for questions, but I just have one more in terms of And it sounded like, Kasha, you were gonna, looked like, not sounded, that you were gonna say something. So if you wanna, but maybe you didn't. Were you going to, or
I don't remember.
You just flipped your head. Okay, that was it. Just a movement. Never mind. No, my final is just what's the most valuable thing, and we can start with you, Kasha, that you've really, this past 6 months, that you've learned, taken with you, that you're just excited to move forward with. What would you say if one person said, what do we need to learn? What would that be?
Yeah, I think the thing that I keep thinking about is what do we know and what do we think we know, and how do we tell the difference? And I think there are more ways than people imagine to get answers to those questions. And I think there's test and learn strategies, there's pilots, there's in-market ways that you can test these things. And I think the time and expense from having a hypothesis to having an answer is closing really quickly. And learning that skill and getting that skill built into your organization, to me, is like the most critical thing you can do right now, because it'll make the difference between how nimble and how much optimization you're going to be able to do in the next couple of years and not. I think if you stick to something really rigid, you're going to end up being a lot slower than your competitors.
Yeah. Andrew, same.
I'm trying to sort of develop a bit of a financial philosophical framework right now that I'm actually kind of working on a lot, because I believe that one of the things that we've learned is that as we're trying to go after more and more targeting, even with cookies and all the things, that'll be solved, I'm not worried about that. But we've never properly valued people, with the exception of Google search, is the only ad medium that we've ever had that has properly valued an individual. Where, for example, you'll have an auto insurance company that has no problem paying $40 a click in Google, but will bitch and moan about an $8 CPM. So there's a whole range of problems that we've all had about valuing ourselves individually. And I'm really, if we can take the cost out of advertising, meaning the production side of advertising, a lot of what we've talked about, a lot of it's going to be automation. I feel sorry for media planners. I think media planning is going to be the first to go. Media strategy will not. I just believe it. And they'll pivot. They'll pivot to other things. But we've never properly valued people. And I think that until we get there, when we talk about scarcity, it's the one thing that we've never talked. It's like, don't talk to the whole world, unless you're P&G, unless you're Coca-Cola. The rest of us are not trying to reach everybody. We're trying to reach actually quite a small number of people. And we've never properly valued people. And I think that is the next 10 years is going to be really fascinating about that. We value publishers, but we don't value publishers, readers, listeners, watchers. So I took a huge pivot, my bad.
How about Kristen?
I've been thinking a lot about going back to foundations, and for us, what that meant was, when I moved over into this new role at the beginning of this year, bringing together the creative, the brand, and the growth teams that were historically separated, right? They were more functional, and now we are one giant team, and learning how to build structural and repeatable foundations that other groups can learn from within our organization on how we share information, are able to move more quickly, are able to share context faster outside of just relying on a creative brief, and really tying those teams together to better understand the customer and go back to the foundations of who are we talking to, where are we talking to them, and why are we talking to them, and having just like clear alignment across the board, so we're not just chasing cool new ideas, but we're chasing cool new ideas with purpose.
Good point. Can I go first next time? She keeps taking my points.
We'll switch you guys next time.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me, right, and this is a great thing, because 6 months to a year ago, I was on the larger brand marketing team where we're trying to do more full funnel stuff and was more intentional. And in the last 5 months, I've been very focused on the performance side of things and very, very low funnel, right? So I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I'm trying to preach, is reconciling your MMM with your MTA, right? There's value in both. what I've encountered with our clients internally has been, MMM gives you long term, right? So I'm looking at it with a lot of data over a longer period of time, but we can't be quick to react to that, right? Because it doesn't look at it granularly. And to Andrew's point again, we want to think about the people and the audiences. That's what the MTA provides. But we also can't get stuck in that because every single detail, one way or another, might skew your thinking and understanding. But the MTA provides that opportunity for more real-time optimization, right? So the reconciliation between the two models is what's going to be important, right? Being able to understand the value that one brings against the other, not that they're competing, but how do they complement each other? I think it's kind of the biggest discussion and what I've learned so far.
Got it. Okay, so let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions for these guys?
We have time for maybe one or two questions. Don't be shy. There's time.
Well, I
not-
always have a question, unless someone else does.
Okay.
I don't want to hog the thing, but we do have a question back there. Somewhere, I can't see through the light.
Maddie's got it.
Doug Cordova, New York Outfront Media. With all the data that you have at hand, how do you separate when it shows you stuff that you truly may not believe or feel? Like, how do you cross-reference all your experience with when the data is showing you, all right, we should segment this, but I just don't think that's going to work?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this with a lot of clients, and I'd say maybe 50% of the time the client's right. I think usually either there's something wrong with the data and you have to find what's wrong with the data, and you have to ask yourself the question, why is this happening, and dig into it and figure it out, or you have to trust the data. And I had an experience. I worked on a consumer packaged goods client, and well, I'll tell you the Rogaine experience. When they brought that to me, everybody thought this is wrong, and it wasn't. I had another experience with that same client where we had a couple weeks of sales that sort of suddenly spiked, and there was nothing in our model that could tell us why those sales spiked. And we could have said, the data's wrong and walked away. We dug into it. A coupon had dropped that had not, we weren't aware of. So my recommendation is, if you don't believe what the data is telling you, figure out, keep digging in and figure out the why behind it. I think I've had some examples where we've learned truly surprising things. Rarely has something like that happened and we couldn't quickly figure out if it was a data issue or not. Like, data issues are generally pretty easy to find, so if something like that happens, if it's not a data issue, I would trust it, but I'm a data and analytics person.
Okay, I'm going to jump, unless it's really the most important thing these people need to hear.
Well,
And it's quick.
I will say that I think that I've always believed that marketing has some of the best product intelligence available across the company. So if a data point is telling you that there's a new customer segment and it doesn't feel comfortable, I would quantify it and give it to the product team and say, would this change is this a new product category that we can pursue? And that might open up a whole new market. It may make marketing uncomfortable, but turn it over to the product team.
And Roland is actually leading a roundtable all on Omnichannel, so you can wait till then. Roland is ready to say something, but he's going to wait until the roundtable, because that's a good tease, all right? So everyone, thank you so much. Give these guys a big round of applause.